The majority of the soldiers that served under Cyrus the Great, Darius I, and Xerxes I were conscripts. These men were pulled from the ranks of the empire's many subject peoples and forced to serve their overlords whether they liked it or not. However, there was one elite military force that was entirely made up of volunteers, the Immortal Army of Persia. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be answering the "Could you survive as a soldier in the Persian Immortals?" For more information, check the description below for more information. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. While Herodotus does claim that all soldiers in the army were volunteers, other historians, such as Plutarch, believed that there may have been some conscripts among their number. Regardless, the men who served as immortals did so with the understanding that once they enlisted, they could not leave the service of the king without their head. The Immortal Army was an honor reserved for the bravest and most skilled warriors in the entire Achaemenid Empire. They were loyal, disciplined, strong, intelligent, and courageous. In fact, it is said that the only thing required of a man wishing to join the Immortals was courage. Everything else could be taught. These elite troops were hand-selected by the king from every corner of his vast empire. This meant that these men came from many different cultures and backgrounds, yet they fought together as one cohesive unit. A soldier had to be physically fit to join the Immortals, and even more importantly, he had to be mentally sharp as well. The average soldier wasn't exactly a super genius, but he needed to know how to use his weapons and armor effectively and follow orders given to him by his officers. He also had to be able to work with others and function independently. Plus, since he would likely be cut off from resupply for weeks at a time, he also had to be self-sufficient. Of course, he didn't have to be completely alone. Immortals traveled in units of 10,000 men led by a general, then followed by several thousand support troops. But still, he would need to rely on his own skills and wits to survive. So let's say you're one of the strongest, bravest warriors in your homeland. Your skills are legendary, and you have decided to throw your hat in the ring and try out for the Immortal Army. Congratulations! You are now on your way to Susa, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, where the king resides. You should also bring along any non-essential items such as extra clothing and perhaps some entertainment, such as a board game or something to play while you wait around camp. As you travel, you will most likely be on foot, unless, of course, you are wealthy enough to pay for a mount. And even then, you probably won't ride the whole way. Instead, you will march alongside your animal, which you can then mount when the time comes. If you don't have either of those things, then get ready to walk, because that's what you'll be doing. When you arrive in Susa, you will be given a small house to live in, and a wife and children, if you have chosen to bring your family with you. After that, you will receive your uniform, which will consist of a linen under-tunic and a woolen over-tunic. You will also be outfitted with a cylindrical leather hat and high boots. You will be armed with a curved sword and dagger. Now, if you are a marksman, you may keep your bow and arrows, as well as any other ranged weapon that you wish to bring. But if you are a charioteer, you must leave your bow behind. Since ancient Persia was very much a horse culture, there were several different types of cavalrymen in the army. But regardless of your specialization, each soldier had to prove himself in combat before being officially accepted into the ranks. Once you have been certified as an immortal, your life will become regimented. Now, this wasn't anything new to the soldiers who had already served in the armies of Persia. The Achaemenid military had been highly trained and well organized long before the Immortal Army was formed. Still though, now that you are a member of the elite force of the empire, your schedule becomes much more hectic. You will be called upon to fight in many battles against a variety of enemies. You will see the many wonders of the ancient world as you travel across the empire, protecting it from its many foes. Because of the unique composition of the army, the Immortals had to learn several different languages. This is so that they could communicate with each other while on campaign, as well as to better understand the people that they were fighting. Even though loyalty to the king was everything, communication within the ranks was still important. Imagine trying to coordinate battle tactics with your comrades if you couldn't speak the same language. It would be complete chaos. Anyone who joined the Immortal Army had to prove proficiency in the empire's official language, Old Persian, as well as two other languages spoken throughout the empire, Elamite and Babylonian. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Since the Immortal Army was designed to be a mobile strike force, These men did not have the luxury of large, expensive siege engines. Sure, they might have used siege engines in certain situations, but it would not be a good idea for them to lug those things around for months at a time. Instead, the Immortal Army relied on a few select engineering marvels to help them take down enemy cities. One of these inventions was the Greek fire, a concoction of chemicals that would be hurled into enemy cities via a siege. Engine Greek fire was also useful for defending the empire's borders, as well as its seafaring vessels. While the exact recipe for this flammable liquid has been lost to time, we do know that it was made of sulfur, saltpeter, and camphor, and it was shot through a tube like a giant flamethrower. Another invention was the armored battering ram, which the Immortals used to break down enemy gates. They would also utilize catapults to hurl boulders over the tops of city walls. In this way, the Immortals were able to keep the Empire safe from invaders without relying on brute force alone. After King Darius II died, his son Artaxerxes II took the throne. He reigned over the empire for nearly 40 years, making him one of the longest ruling monarchs of the ancient world. During his reign, the empire enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity. Trade flourished, and the king was able to focus on expanding the empire's borders rather than defending them. Because of this, he was able to add several provinces to the empire, including parts of Central Asia, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia. During this time, the Immortal Army was largely responsible for securing these new territories and keeping them loyal to the crown. Soldiers were deployed all over the empire to maintain order and protect the borders from outside threats. In fact, the Immortals were present in virtually every military engagement that the Achaemenid Empire was involved in during its existence. They fought against the Greeks at the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Plataea, and the Battle of Thermopylae, as well as against the Egyptians at the Battle of Karansabis and the Battle of Gaugamela. Now, being an elite soldier means that you will be killed in action from time to time. That's just part of the job. However, even if you die, you will live on in the hearts and minds of the people of the empire. One of the reasons that the soldiers of the Immortal Army were so fierce in battle was because they believed that if they died in combat, they would go on to live a wonderful afterlife. Cyrus the Great founded Zoroastrianism, a dualistic religion that emphasized the battle between good and evil. This belief system had a profound impact on the culture and society of ancient Persia and helped to shape the empire into one of the most powerful and influential civilizations of the ancient world. According to this religion, the world was created by Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity and source of all wisdom, goodness, and truth. He was constantly in conflict with Angra-Mainyu, the spirit of destruction and deceit. When a person died, their soul would go on a journey to the land of the living and would have to answer for their sins. If they were found guilty, they would spend eternity in darkness. But if they were innocent, they would be rewarded with a place in paradise. This belief system motivated the soldiers of the Immortal Army to fight bravely in battle, since they knew that if they died, they would be rewarded with an everlasting afterlife. So what do you think? Could you survive as an immortal? You think you could handle the rigorous lifestyle that these elite soldiers were subjected to? Let me know in the comments section below. If you were a bath attendant in ancient Rome, there was no such thing as a bathroom break. The job of a bath attendant in those days was to clean the patrons of the public baths, and that meant dealing with their filth head-on. A bath attendant would likely be a slave who had been purchased by a wealthy family to serve them in their homes. There were also common baths, where people from all walks of life could come together and bathe in the communal pools. And these places were absolutely filthy. The attendants in these public baths would have to deal with all kinds of waste, including human excrement, which might have been used as soap. They might even have to scrape parasites off the patrons' bodies or pick out dirt and other debris that had been compiling in their noses and ears. If they were lucky, they wouldn't have to eat any of it. But sometimes the patrons would cough up blood, pus, or other disgusting things while the slaves were cleaning them. The attendants would simply have no choice but to eat what they scooped out. This wasn't considered eating filth at the time because these substances were thought to be excreted from the body naturally. Blood was believed to be good for ridding the body of impurities. No 9. Danger in the baths. As if eating body parts wasn't bad enough, a Roman bath attendant also ran the risk of getting stabbed or beaten to death while on the job. In the public baths, it was customary for patrons to cover themselves in oil and scrape it off to remove dirt and dead skin. The oil would be saved and used for cleaning other patrons. However, this meant that the bath attendants had to sift through everyone's scraped-off skin to make sure nothing too dangerous was left behind. It wasn't uncommon to find small pebbles in the oil, and these might have been pushed into someone's eye during the scraping process. If an attendant found something dangerous in the oil, like a shard of bone or glass, they would have to discreetly dispose of it without being seen. Otherwise, if the patrons noticed that something was missing from their oil, they would demand an explanation. And if the attendants couldn't prove that they hadn't stolen something, they were often put to death. Sometimes the patrons got angry about their service and would beat the attendants or take out their frustrations on them by stabbing them with sharp tools. Even the emperor's personal bath attendants didn't get to enjoy a cushy life. Nero's personal slave Papa Yasabina was killed on his orders, after he became enraged by the way she cut his nails. 8. All about the muscles. Ancient Roman bathhouses weren't just places to get clean, they were centers of social activity and business. Patrons would meet in the bathhouses to discuss politics, gossip, and other important matters. Would train in the bathhouses, lifting weights, and wrestling each other. And many men went to the bathhouses to try and impress potential partners. Because of this, the bath attendants needed to know a lot about the human body, particularly the male body. Slaves who worked in the public baths often knew which patrons were looking for a sexual encounter and would try to make their charges look their best. This meant giving them massages that accentuated their muscles and making sure their bodies were free of any unwanted hair. Some bath attendants would even help patrons pose in ways that made their muscles appear more impressive. Being an expert on the male physique was important for a bath attendant's survival. If a patron was disappointed with the way they looked in the bathhouse, they might lash out at their attendant. To avoid this, the bath attendants would study sculpture and learn which poses appeared most impressive. They would also teach their patrons how to pose so they could make their muscles look bigger. 7. Working for free. To be a bath attendant in ancient Rome, you didn't need any special skills or training. The position was usually given to prisoners of war or people who had been convicted of a crime and sentenced to servitude. These people didn't get paid for their work. Instead, they were fed and given a place to sleep. The food and lodging was usually pretty bad, and many bath attendants died young, either from exhaustion or illness. Even though bath attendants were usually slaves or convicts, it was still a coveted position. That's because being around so many naked men gave them an opportunity to steal valuable items that the patrons had hidden in their folds. While giving a massage or scraping off dead skin, a skilled thief could slip a finger under a fold of fat and swipe valuables. Most bath attendants didn't have the nerve to steal from the patrons, but when the chance presented itself, they took it. No. 6. The emperor's new bath. When the emperor decided he wanted a new bath, the bath attendants had to get to work. Emperor Nero was particularly fond of baths and liked to surround himself with hot water whenever possible. Unfortunately for the slaves, Nero's baths were notoriously difficult to keep clean. He preferred to have milk instead of water, and the milk would spoil quickly. The slaves were in charge of heating up the milk and dumping it into his enormous bathtub, and they had to keep the milk warm for hours at a time. If they let the milk cool down, they would be punished severely. Nero's servants were also instructed to put exotic plants into his bath to make the water smell nice, which meant the attendants had to spend time searching for flowers and herbs. They would then chop up the plants and throw them into the bathwater, which they had to keep topped up with fresh milk, while the emperor basked in his milky bath. 5. Blood and oil. In addition to scraping off dead skin, Roman bath attendants also helped the patrons exfoliate by covering them in a special type of oil. They would rub the oil into the person's skin and then cover them in a special clay mask. Once the mask was dry, the attendants would scrape it off along with the oil, taking all the dead skin with it. What made this practice so unpleasant was that the oil was often mixed with the blood of sacrificed animals. The blood was believed to have healing properties and was used to treat everything from acne to snake bites. The bath attendants probably didn't mind using animal blood as much as the patrons did, because it was the patrons who had to walk around covered in the stuff. 4. Cleaning cuts and wounds. Many Romans bathed daily, but not all of them were clean. Cuts, scrapes, and wounds often got infected, which caused abscesses. When a customer came in with an abscess, The bath attendants were responsible for lancing it and draining the pus. This was usually done with a sharp piece of metal or a reed. After the abscess had been drained, the wound would be cleaned with water or wine. Wine was commonly used as a disinfectant in ancient Rome. The bath attendants were also responsible for treating burns and broken bones. They would set the broken bones and cover the wounds with a paste made of flour and vinegar. This paste would keep the wound from drying out and getting infected. Burns were treated with a salve made of olive oil and honey. Number 3, a groom and a barber. These days we think of barbers as giving haircuts and shaving beards. But in ancient Rome, barbers were also responsible for removing body hair. It was common for Roman men to have their chests, arms, and legs waxed. The wax was heated up and then applied to the skin. Once the wax had hardened, it was ripped off, taking the hair with it. This was very painful, but the Romans believed it was necessary to stay clean and attractive. In addition to waxing, the bath attendants also gave the patrons massages. They would use a variety of techniques to relieve muscle pain and improve circulation. The massage would usually start with the application of oil, followed by kneading and slapping. The patrons enjoyed the massages so much that many of them would ask the bath attendants to hit them harder. Sometimes the patrons would even request that their bath attendants bite them. Biting was believed to help improve circulation and reduce pain. No. 2. More than just dirt. In today's world, we associate dirt with uncleanliness. But in ancient Rome, dirt was used for a variety of purposes, one of which was cleaning. The Romans believed that dirt from certain springs had healing properties. They would cover themselves in the dirt and let it sit on their skin for hours at a time. This was believed to help treat everything from acne to poison ivy. The Romans also believed that dirt could be used as a form of birth control. Women would insert dirt into their vaginas to prevent getting pregnant. This was not very effective, but it was a common practice nonetheless. The dirt was also used as a toothpaste and mouthwash. The Romans believed that it could help prevent gum disease and bad breath. They would mix dirt with water and then use it to brush their teeth and rinse their mouths.